Hi folks, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates. I am not sitting in my living room with all the fake pretty pictures swirling in the background. I am in one of my very favorite places in the world. This is the Arts Park in Broad Ripple, where I used to have my writing studio, where I took poetry classes, where I wrote my first book, where I like to bring Mr. Pauly for walks. So this is one of my safe places. It's a beautiful place, and we've been blessed in February with 60-degree weather, so I thought I'd get myself out in it. So I have some poetry for you guys, and it's about the nature of our shattering. Many times we see the agent of shattering being external, and I have come across some insights, at least for myself of late, that indicate that it might be a bit of an inside job. So I'll just read the poem, as I'm prone to do, and I'm sorry if the sound is not going to be awesome due to wind. I'll try to cover the mic up a little bit here. So the poem is entitled From Whence Was Your Shattering Birthed? Whence was your shattering birthed? Violent, turbulent tornadoes brought disturbingly regular carnage and ruination upon the little shack that I call my life. I thought I had figured out why. I was spawned by a tsunami of rage and insecurity and instability and thunderclouds and just batshit crazy. Referring to my mother, of course. I understand the meaning and purpose of love. I wrote books on the subject. You marry your unresolved issues. So I enthusiastically set about to woo annihilation, wreckage, femme fatales, the daughters of the devil himself. Violent, turbulent tornadoes continued their disturbingly regular carnage and ruination upon the little shack I call my life. Tornadoes enveloped me. They weren't just flung at me by my wicked collection of cluster bees. Occasionally, a dark, rumbling hurricane would subvert, slaughter, and slay me in the workplace. Then it hit me. I saw it, finally. I wasn't just fearlessly and foolishly playing in the path of murderous tornadoes. I was actually spawning the tornadoes from within my very self. My dark side, hidden to myself, would hurl rage and emotional violence out into the universe, where it would slowly spiral and spin into a gale force of nature 100 times stronger, and then it would become a hate-seeking missile aimed directly at my little shack. What goes around comes around. My grandfather, it turns out, had twin tornadoes of arrogance and unaccountability, which invited liquidation and bankruptcy. My mother's tornado of duplicity invited the whirlwinds of scrutiny from the FBI and ultimate imprisonment, spawning self-shattering tornadoes seems to be in my blood. Violent, turbulent tornadoes no longer are visiting my little shack. The winds have become wonderfully calm. The hurt beneath my infantile rage has finally been cried through and healed. Ironically, I needed the wreckage of the storms in order to heal the wounds of my childhood. Violent storms no longer visit my little shack. Okay, now I'm going to read through and give a little commentary. You hear Mr. Pauly whining in the background. He's been captured by a tree, and he's about done with that. Whence was your shattering birthed? Violent, turbulent tornadoes brought disturbingly regular carnage and ruination upon the little shack that I call my life. I thought I had figured out why. Of course, I was spawned by a tsunami of rage, instability, thunderclouds, and out batshit crazy. Of course, we teach y'all that your shattering really isn't about the narcissists in your life. It's about the narcissist that you grew up with and the abuse and the abandonment that you grew up with. But it goes a little deeper than that. I understood the meaning and purpose of love. You marry your unresolved issues. I'd written books on that. So, of course, I enthusiastically wooed annihilation, wreckage, the femme fatales, the daughters of the devil himself. That's what love is, folks. However you're wounded as a child, you're going to attract somebody. And I'm not saying all of you all are like me and that you put energy out in the world that would come back at you. But just listen to the poem and meditate on it and see if some of this doesn't apply to you. Violent, turbulent storms continued their disturbingly regular carnage and ruination upon the little shack I call my life. So I knew why I picked these women. I had been in therapy off and on since I was in my early 30s, mainly on. Rarely much of a break from therapy during all that time. I'd read very many books. I'd cried very many tears. But I still was entangled with people, women who were dark and dangerous storms. Tornadoes enveloped me. They weren't just flung at me by these wicked collection of cluster bees. Occasionally, a dark, rumbling hurricane would roll in and subvert, slaughter, and slay me while I was at work. So, this is where I finally started to see the pattern that sometimes in our woundedness, in our little boy and little girl pain, we're angry and we've been hurt so badly, we've been wounded so badly that we communicate that rage and that anger out into the world, and it has a boomerang effect. Then it hit me. I saw it finally. I wasn't just fearlessly and foolishly playing in the path of murderous tornadoes. I was actually spawning them from within myself. I not only attracted these women, I brought out of my woundedness and out of my anger that was covering over the sadness and the woundedness, I brought some negative energy, and what goes around comes around. My hidden dark side, hidden probably only to myself, would hurl rage and emotional violence and negative energy into the universe, where it would slowly spiral and spin into a gale force of nature 100 times stronger, a hate-seeking missile aimed directly at my little shack, and then my shack would get blown up, and I'd go, why is everybody picking on me? Why is this happening to me? I'm a nice man. And I am a nice man. But when you sow, that also shall you reap. And if you reap anger and rage and negative energy into the universe, it's liable to come and bite you on your ass. My grandfather, as it turned out, had twin tornadoes of arrogance and unaccountability, which invited liquidation of his large clothing store in Kokomo, Indiana, and it invited bankruptcy. This man had worked his whole life to build an empire, and it was a very, very successful business, Anthrop's Forest Park Apparel in Kokomo, Indiana. And through some arrogance on his part, the bank called the note in, and he ended his career in disgrace and in destruction. But he's the guy that put the tornadoes out there. My mother's storm of duplicity invited whirlwinds of scrutiny by the FBI and ultimate imprisonment. Now, when I say imprisonment, it worked good in the poem, but it really was Howard County local jail, which she called summer camp. She spent the summer in jail, and she made a lot of crafts. Always the jokester, and never one to contemplate what ended up landing her there. She turned it into summer art project. Spawning self-shattering tornadoes seems to be in my blood. You know what, folks? Violent, turbulent tornadoes are no longer visiting my little shack. The winds have been wonderfully calmed. The hurt beneath my infantile rage has finally been cried through and healed. Ironically, I required the wreckage of all the storms, all the tornadoes, all the tsunamis, all the hurricanes that rumbled through my life. I needed all of that in order to heal the wounds of my childhood. Violent, turbulent tornadoes no longer are making visitation upon my little shack. So, how does this pertain to all of you? Well, some of you it doesn't. Some of you didn't really have a voice, and in your process of being narcissistically abused, you sort of just laid back and got abused and sort of took the abuse. But in my case, and I think in many people's case, what happens is we're so shocked, we're so terrorized that an anger and a rage does come out, and it's a bit of a craziness. And when you fling that out into the universe, it will come back and get you. And I've been able to sort of review my life and see how I've done that in probably, 10 different occasions, 10 different relationships, and there's probably more. What's the moral of the story? Can you go back in time and not do it? No, you can't. The moral of the story is the pain and damage that comes from the wreckage of the storm is really a blessing in disguise. That your narcissistic abuse can be proactive and redemptive, and it can be the very thing that helps to heal you so that you can live life not reenacting the drama, trauma, abuse, abandonment, and narcissistic abuse of your childhood. So, I wish I could describe the sense of calm and peace and healing that I have in my life after a tumultuous dance with multiple vicious hurricane storms. All these storms, most of them had female names, just like they name hurricanes now male and female names. But the underlying name of all the storms was my own name. And when you cry through the underneath tears and you heal that wounded little kid who's been arranging your demise all along, you can reach a place of healing. You might need to still clean up some messes. It does feel like there were twin hurricanes that leveled spots and places in my life, and I'll be a while picking up branches and rebuilding parts of the little shack. But I believe that good weather and calm and peace is in the forecast, and I'm very grateful for that, and I'm wishing you the same. Thank you for watching today. If you haven't joined our YouTube channel, subscribe to that. Join us on Tuesday night. Yes, we're doing Tuesday night, Valentine's Day at 8 o'clock until 9:30. So brother can get home and get to bed a little earlier. Also, I do have some really good books on abandonment and on shame at familytreecounseling.com. I'm sorry that storms have leveled your little shacks, and some of you were just flattened by a recreation of your family of origin energy, and others of us were flattened by that, but also provoked the universe to come get us. And I hope this makes sense. I hope it's spoken to you, and I hope it leads to a life of peace and tranquility and serenity. Thank you for watching today. I hope you were able to hear it. God bless.